A lot of times in any kind of groups or smaller context community ministry, we can find our leaders, ourselves maybe who lead them, and even our members going, well, what do you want us to do? Is it a Bible study? Is it a prayer group? What do you want us to be doing? That's a question we've considered quite deeply here, and the best place for it is the best place to find any answer. That's within the Scriptures. The what of our groups is actually the 59 one another's of the New Testament. There are 59 one another statements within the New Testament that are given to us starting in the Gospels, but also going through the New Testament letters. And in a sense, those are the how now shall we live of the Bible, of everything that's come before it. If you think about it, this one anothering is always how God has used His people to encourage them and to build them up, but also to use them to impact unbelieving nations, unbelieving neighbors. From Genesis 12, where God calls out a family and a community to image Himself, up through the Exodus, putting them in a promised land surrounded by enemies, up through the exile where they are to be a blessing to the nations around them, all the way to John 13, when Jesus is creating a new community, a new family, and He calls them together and He says to them, "A new commandment I give you, love one another. Just as I have loved you, you must love one another. By this, all men will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." This is the final apologetic to an unbelieving world. This love of one another will be what speaks the loudest to a world that is increasingly hateful, that is increasingly bitter, and increasingly looking for someone who will love them. A case in point is one of our own home groups here at the Village. We had some members invite in their mother and this man's mother-in-law to join the group. She was not a believer, and she was very polite about that right up front, but she kept coming back to the group. She seemed to be enjoying it. And so a few weeks in, some of the members were talking with her and they said, "Hey, thank you for being so honest and so gracious. We know you're not a believer in Jesus and you keep coming to the group. Why do you keep coming back?" And she looked at them and she said, "My entire life, no one has ever loved me like this." The one anothering that is done with the few is always intended by God to be for the salvation of the multitudes. Jesus prayed for this. In John 17, He's in the Garden of Gethsemane. These are his final moments that He will have with His disciples, and this is His final recorded prayer that we have. Who does He pray for? He looks through time and He prays for you and for me. He says, for those that will come. He says, Lord, would you give them unity? Would you make them one, just as you and I are one, so that they may know that you sent me. We one another so that the world may know that the Father sent the Son. You need to be thinking about what these groups will do. What are they going to accomplish? Well, hopefully it's New Testament Christianity, Christian practice. What will be the context for encouraging one another and building each other up? Having the same mind of Christ. Where will these things happen? Google it. Look up the 59 one another statements if you're wondering what we need to be doing in a group. This is classic and ancient Christian practice. You are stepping into a time-tested stream that the Lord Jesus Himself has initiated. And that is a powerful what to be doing every time you gather together in your small groups.